Hello, this is Joe Vexter, Ace Reporter. Finally, we have somewhere to podcast. We were ready to podcast from the kitchen, and then we got evicted. We were ready to podcast in the basement, and then a large sound came. Someone wanted to have a conversation. So we are upstairs, and yes, finally we have peace. Unless somebody opens the door and speaks, and we'll have to invite them onto the podcast. It's what happens when a home is a studio, I guess. More peace and harmony in the Olkanut studio, but I don't know. Now it's the Joseph Vivaldi Network studio. Oh, chaos. Ukraine invasion. What to know as Russian forces target Kiev. By Menelos Hadjikostas. Nicosia, Cyprus, AP News. Try to pronounce that name twice. I don't know. After a barrage of airstrikes on cities and military bases around the country, Russian forces were closing in on Ukraine's capital on Saturday. The city warned of street fighting and urged residents to stay inside and take cover. With growing signs that Russia aims to overthrow him, President Volodymyr Zelensky called on Ukrainians to stand firm and saying, "The fate of Ukraine is being decided right now." He refused American help to evacuate, according to a senior U.S. intelligence official who quoted Zelensky saying that he needed anti-tank ammunition, but not a ride. The assault, anticipated for weeks by the West, amounts to Europe's largest ground conflict since World War II, as President Vladimir Putin tries to restore Moscow's Cold War influence. I have something to say about this. Why do you resort to going back to the past when it wasn't even good anyway? I don't know. It's like the barbarianism, I don't know. I'm gonna have commentary about that, and I don't know. It is unclear how much or little Russian forces have seized or the extent of the casualties. Russian Defense Ministry spokesman Major General Igor Konashenkov claimed Saturday that since the start of Russia's attack, its military had hit 821 Ukrainian military faculties, 87 tanks, and other targets. He didn't say how many Ukrainian troops were killed and didn't mention any casualties on the Russian side. His claims and Ukraine's allegations that its forces killed thousands of Russian troops could not be independently verified. They're just, I don't know about that. It seems a little bit fishy. At least that's my instinct a little bit about that. However, U.S. defense officials said they believe the Russian offense has encountered considerable resistance and is proceeding more slowly than Moscow had envisioned, though that could change quickly. Here are the things to know about the conflict and the security crisis in former Soviet-dominated Eastern Europe. Russian troops march on. This might be a long podcast, so bear with me, and this is from AP News. Kiev officials are warning residents that street fighting is underway against Russian forces. They advise residents to remain in shelters or, if home, to avoid going near windows or on balconies, or to take precautions against being hit by debris or bullets. It's not a good situation for them right now. The Ukrainian military said a battle was underway near a military unit to the west of the city center. Kiev Mayor Vitaly Klitschko said, bear with me with the names, said, new explosions shook the area near a major power plant that the Russians were trying to attack. A missile slammed into a high-rise building on the southern-western outskirts of Kiev. Klitschko said Saturday. He said rescue workers were heading there and posted an image on a messaging app showing a gaping hole on one side of the building. Russian troops were trying to advance on the city from several directions. The Russian invasion of Ukraine began Thursday with massive air and missile strikes and ground troops moving in from the northeast, and south. They're going all over the place. At least that's what I got out of this article. The Russian military said Friday it had encircled the cities of Sumy and Konotop in northeastern Ukraine, but taking steps to ensure civilian safety. said it's also seized a strategic airport outside Kiev, allowing its quickly built up forces to take the capital. Meanwhile, senior U.S. defense officials said Friday it's estimated that Russia has now launched more than 200 missiles into Ukraine, and some have hit residential areas, although it was unclear if they were deliberately targeted. Ukraine's military reported shooting down an II-76 Russian transport plane carrying paratroopers near Kiev, a city 25 miles, 40 kilometers south of Kiev. Second, Russian Il-76 was shot down near Bila Surskva, 50 miles, 85 kilometers south of Kiev. According to two American officials with direct knowledge of conditions on the ground in Ukraine. Now, this is hints of talks to stop the fighting. Hopes for a negotiated end to the war rose and then dimmed on Friday after a tentative agreement to discuss Zelensky's offer to designate Ukraine the non-aligned country appeared to break down. The Kremlin initially said it's ready to send a delegation to Belarus, then later backpedaled, saying the Ukrainian government had indicated it preferred to meet in Warsaw, then halted communications. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov also questioned the sincerity of Ukrainian's president's offer and said Zelensky should have agreed to talks early on. But late Friday, Zelensky spokesman Sergei Nikiforov wrote on Facebook that the two sides were consulting on a place and time for the talks. A lot of miscommunication here. That's what I get out of it. Hungary's Foreign Minister Peter Szijjártó offered Budapest as a possible location. Also writing on Facebook, he said he put proposal to both Russia's and Ukraine's government, and neither dismissed it. Before the invasion, Ukraine had rejected Russia's demand to keep Ukraine out of NATO. Putin used the refusal to justify the invasion, claiming that the West left him no other choice. It looks like he's spoiled looks like he's spoiled a little bit. I don't know. Ukraine should be free to negotiate wherever they want to negotiate. If they want to negotiate, then NATO, let them. If they want to negotiate with the polar bears, let them. I don't know who they're negotiating with, but, if they want to side with NATO, they sure as hell could side with NATO. What business does Putin have to decide Ukraine's fate? I don't know. He's not their overseer. I don't know. Now he wants Soviet Union back. I don't know. It's just madness. I tell you. Civilians in harm's way. Walking to the second day of Russia's invasion, horrified civilians found themselves at risk as artillery shells rained down on some residential buildings on Kiev's outskirts. City residents stood uneasily, and this is an AP article, I'll just tell you, AP article, uneasily in doorways of apartments, buildings, watching armored personnel carriers driving down the streets. After 8 p.m., a large boom was heard made on a word that I can't pronounce. The square in central Kiev, Nezalezhnosti, the square in central Kiev. The major said 5 explosions struck near a major power plant just outside the city. The causes of the explosions was not immediately known. Ravna, a lot of words that are tough to pronounce. Shamsna, the spokesman for the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, said its staffers have so far verified at least 25 civilian deaths and 101 injured, mostly from shelling the airstrips. A spokesman for the UN Refugee Agency, Shabia Mantu, said more than 100,000 people were believed to have left their homes in Ukraine, and that up to 4 million people may flee to other countries if the situation escalates, fleeing for safety. And it turns like that they're in a refugee situation. I don't know. Thousands of Ukrainians crossed Friday into neighboring countries to the west in search of safety from the unfolding war in their country, with men of military age banned from leaving the country. Most of those who crossed borders were women, children, and the elderly. One woman from Kiev who arrived in Przemysl, Poland, described how men were pulled off trains in Ukraine before they got to the border. Cars were backed up for several miles at some border crossings. Authorities in Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, Romania, and Moldova mobilized to receive the Ukrainians, providing shelter, food, and legal help. These countries also eased their usual border procedures, including COVID-19 testing requirements. I have to say this. Putin is acting like a big jack right now. You could, since this is not explicit, you could fill in the last name of that. And I can't mention that name because this is not explicit. But you understand he's a big jerk. I will say that. Pope's personal appeal for peace. Okay. This is continuing with the article. The Pope broke protocol with an in-person visit Friday to the Russians' embassy to express his concern about the war in Ukraine. Pope Francis' extraordinary gesture was viewed as a sign of his anger at Russia's action and his willingness to make a personal appeal for the end of hostilities. The Pope traveled to and from the embassy in a small white car with Vatican officials saying they knew of no such previous papal initiative. The Pope likes to do things unexpected, I guess. Nuclear war nightmare revisited. Reviving Cold War fears of the nuclear showdown. Putin has warned in his speech that he has the weapons available if anyone dares to use military means to try to stop his takeover of Ukraine. Whether an empty threat or not, Putin's words reanimated the specter of nuclear war through accident or miscalculation. It's bringing back the Cold War. That's not a good thing, good sign for us all. The Russian president said in a speech earlier Thursday that despite losing a considerable part of the capabilities after the fall of the Soviet Union, Russia remains one of the most powerful nuclear states and had a certain advantage in several cutting-edge weapons. Turning the screws on Russia. I'm going to read more, and I know, just bear with me, it's a long article, but I am trying to do my best to report the news. A lot of things that I get out of this article, and a lot aren't good. He's a baboon, to say the least. Putin, that is. Turning the screws on Russia. The West has taken a military option in Ukraine off the table, but world leaders, with the exception of Moscow, ally China, are preparing measures aimed at hurting the Russian economy and its leaders, including Putin himself. I heard in Bloomberg TV, or radio I should say, that he has a lot of his assets in China, and I don't know, it's not a good sign, because China is, from the onset, could be protecting Putin. I don't know. I know about that. Don't quote me on that, but he's got his assets in China somewhat, so I don't know. Turning the screws on Russia. The West has taken a military option in Ukraine off the table, but the world leaders, with the exception of Moscow ally China, are preparing measures aimed at hurting the Russian economy and its leaders, including Putin himself. The US, Britain, Canada, European Union said Friday they will sanction Putin, Lavrov, his foreign minister. The EU unanimously agreed to free their assets. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki indicated the U.S. sanctions will include a travel ban. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova said the sanctions showed the total helplessness of the West, who are going to talk to. Nuclear power, a great country. Who have you decided to play with? Shakira said in televised remarks. I'm gonna read on. Stuck with this article. I'm gonna read on. No matter where it is, I'm just gonna have commentary on it. Alright. EU ministers have said that even further sanctions were still possible, including booting Russia out of SWIFT, the dominant system for global financial transactions. Asian and Pacific countries have joined the West in taking punitive measures against Russia, including export controls aimed at starving its industries and military of semiconductors on other high-tech products in retaliation to British bans on aerial flights. Russia's Civil Aviation Authority forbade UK flights to and over Russia starting Friday, Getting tired now. Canada's largest province is pulling all Russian vodka from government-owned liquor stores. Ontario's finance minister said Quebec is considering a ban on Russian liquor. They're cutting they're cutting them, and they get tired. The Council of Europe also suspended Russia from the continent's foremost human rights organization. In its pop culture, the wildly popular Eurovision Song Contest was banned Russia from the May finals in Turin, Italy. Also, sporting world turns its back. Russia has been stripped of hosting the Champions League final by the UEFA, with St. Petersburg replaced by Paris, and Formula One dropped this season's Russian Grand Prix in Sochi in September. The showpiece final in European men's football season will still be held on May 28th, but at the 88,000th seat Stade de France, the International Sky Federation announced Russia will not host any more of its World Cup events this winter, and European Curling Championships, scheduled to be held in November in Perm, Russia, will also be relocated. Sports International governing body announced on Friday. This is not a good sign. International Tennis Federation also canceled all events taking place in Russia indefinitely. And I will say, Associated Press writers around the world contributed to this report. I will say this. As Joe Vexter speaks, there is chaos around the other side of the world, and Russia is acting like they're bullies and threatening to destroy us all. And this is what I have to say with that. If you just remember that our souls and our spirits, and even those beyond, will haunt you. Oh, Putin. Yes, those spirits will come and haunt you. You know what's sad about that? You could have made trade agreements. You could have worked hand in hand with the other country. But instead you had to destroy them. And that is uncalled for. And you know what? Just remember, when you point your finger at one or more countries will be pointed at you. It's just a figure of speech. So I have to leave it like that. So, Putin, you want Ukraine, you're taking it. Well, you know what? Just remember, this land is our land. It's of God's land. You know what? Not Putin's land. Our land. We all have a right to live in the land. I have to say that. You can own the land, but you know what? I don't know. Just unsettling to think what you are doing right now. This has been News with Joe Vexter. Thanks for staying with me for 7 minutes. Have a good night.